Hey everybody, it's Bruno on MB where it can't all be serious. I got my new friend Ian Hill. I'm not even going to try to introduce Ian with all the crazy accolades and stuff like that, but Ian, welcome to the show. We're going to be talking about some really cool stuff. How you doing today?
I'm doing amazing, and Bruno, thank you for having me, and congratulations on all the success of YYC and all the new things that are going to be coming all across Canada. I think the way you're uniting the business community, not only in Calgary, but across the country is not only noble and honorable, but incredibly important.
Oh, I really appreciate it. And I thought when you congratulated me was, about winning the Grammy, uh,
Yeah,
and
yeah,
also possibly making the Yankees because I think we both can make them this year. But
yeah.
no, I really appreciate it, and you've been really helpful and with all your great experience. I wanted to start off by saying, you're kind of changing the world a little bit, one snap at a time, and we're going to be talking about that either in this episode or the next one. But we want, how in the world did you get connected with Canada? I think that's where we
Sure.
want to start off because you are like the Florida prunes. You're the best import for men our age.
Yeah, I started my Canadian journey about 20 years ago. I was asked to speak actually at the Peter F. Drucker Awards in Niagara College. And that began an incredible 2-decade journey that transformed my life. I've been to 600 Canadian communities at
Wow.
last count. I've been from Twillingate, Newfoundland to Port Alberni, BC, from Hay River, the Northwest Territories, to Crystal Beach, Ontario, which I know you played ball there. And
Grew up there close by, yeah.
Canada changed my life. Canada made me a better man, made me a better human being. Donkin, Nova Scotia, Cape Breton Island, Pincher Creek, Alberta, Salmon Arm, BC, Gravelburg, Saskatchewan, Kenora, Ontario, Hay River, as I mentioned earlier, Shashashi, Labrador. These people, the places, they transformed me. I learned how to be tough, but also be gentle, to have pride in a country, but not be an arrogant jerk. I learned how to be a man, and I will forever be grateful to Canada for that.
Well, you know what, Ian? Let's take the mystery out of it because a guy that grew up in Phoenix.
Tucson.
Oh, sorry, in Tucson. I meant to say Arizona. So a kid that grew up in Arizona. There's only two reasons why you come to Canada: for what you did and witness protection. So let's dismiss that. So was it witness protection?
Well, the witness protection. Yeah,
Okay,
we
all
got,
right.
it's funny. I got invited to speak, and then one thing led to another, and then we were doing a little bit of business, and we were partnering with people like the Ministry of Community and Social Services in Ontario to do some very innovative projects. And all of a sudden, Canada was very good to me. And so we decided to launch an initiative across Canada. Canada had given me more than I could have ever hoped to have. So we launched an initiative to build playgrounds and skate parks and fitness parks called Let Them Be Kids. And we built the first playground in Oshawa, Ontario, right there by the OC, the Oshawa Center, and
Yeah.
Radio Park. And Dan Carter, who's the mayor of Oshawa now, he owned the television station. He was involved, and the chief of police at the time was Vern White, who is now Senator Vern White, who went on to be the chief of police in Ottawa, and then was
That's right.
appointed senator by Prime Minister Harper. But these guys, we rallied and we built this playground, and it was my way of giving back to a country. But then that led to a playground in Clarenville, Newfoundland. And then that led to 2 playgrounds in Sault Ste. Marie, Ontario. And then the next thing you know, Kool-Aid gets on board. We've got a nationwide, Canada-wide initiative, and we build 168 playgrounds honoring fallen soldiers, Canadians' finest sons and daughters who gave the ultimate sacrifice. And we honored them in big towns and small. And it connected me to a country in a way that I never could have imagined being connected. It's not why we did it, but when you stand with Corporal Albert Storm's parents as they build the playground in Crystal Beach, and 600 people come out to do so, you just get connected to people and places and a country in ways that I can't even explain to you.
You know, and it's interesting because you came up here for this, and then you ended up doing this, and you're kind of like the adopted son up here. And you mentioned something about, the US is your dad or something like that. Why don't you elaborate on that? I thought that was a
Yeah,
great saying.
I've always said that the U.S. was my dad. I wasn't born in the United States. That's a crazy story. I was born in Iran. I was smuggled out of Iran by the United States Air Force. The United States Air Force sergeant purchased me actually as an infant on the black market. And so the United States was like a dad to me, that hard military upbringing, a senior master sergeant, hard ass. But my Canadian experience has been different. Canada loved me. Um, I'll get emotional about it, but the only way to explain it is being accepted, being appreciated, being valued. Um, Canada just held me close to its bosom and told me that I had value and I had worth, that I could do great things after I had maybe had some business failures and some challenges. And so the 20-year experience has been phenomenal. I've tried to do everything I can to give back to a country that's been given so much to me, but I'll never be able to repay Canada and its people for the difference that they've made in my life.
Well, you know what? You're trying, and you really try to give back. And I don't know how many people have ever built playgrounds and how many you've done. But I'm going to ask you a tough question. Like in our show, it can't all be serious. We're going to joke around a little bit on how we met and stuff like that. Not joke around, but people are going to go, "Oh my God, how do you bump into these people, and how do you bump into me?" Right? Heaven forbid you bump into too many people like us. But the truth of the matter is, I would challenge most Canadian, including myself. You've been to more small towns that probably all my friends put together. Like there's some small towns, and without getting into, how great they are, because I think you're going to get into that anyways, and how many people you met. How has Canada changed? Like you've been doing this for almost 20 years, right?
Real talk. So you real question, give you real talk. I remember when we'll talk about Alberta. First came to Alberta, 20 years ago. I was the only person of color in most of the communities that I went to that weren't one of our First Nations friends. Certainly the diversity that is Alberta, the diversity that is Canada. Just last year, 700,000 new Canadians coming into the
Wow.
country. So I've seen an incredible diversity of Canada. And you know what? To be frank, and this isn't the most positive. I remember the first time I sat and watched Canadian television, sitting in a hotel room in Toronto, and I thought to myself, "Gosh, I just finished watching the news. There was no shootings, there was no murders, there was no nothing." And then I remember
Mhm.
being in that hotel room for a week in
Yeah.
downtown Toronto, and there wasn't one talk of one shooting or one murder or
Yeah.
one stabbing or one death. Now, tragically, as we turn on television and we open up our search engines all across Canada, we hear of heinous, horrific crimes. So I think that's been a shift. And then finally, I think there's been an incredible shift in trust. Trust. Trust of our governmental entities and institutions, trust of our non-social profit, nonprofit institutions, and trust of our fellow man. Um, I always found that Canada was an incredibly trusting place, and I think it is still to some degree, but not like it was even 10 years ago. So we face real challenges here in Canada, but I know that we have what it takes. You look at Alberta specifically, there's a rugged individualism. There's a find a way, make a way attitude. Some of the greatest engineering feats in the history of mankind have come out of Alberta. And that's why I love hanging in Alberta and being in Alberta, because there's an energy and a spirit like nowhere else in the world.
Well, it's interesting. Like let's talk about. I always say it's interesting. It's cool because how we met was like totally. I don't even know how you can even calculate
Random.
that stuff.
Yeah, random.
So, yeah, I mean, not only was it random, it was Randy. And so I believe one of the greatest football players, totally underrated across Canada, is Randy Chevrier.
Yeah.
And how we met is because you were long snapping, and Randy's a friend of mine, thank God. And all of a sudden he's saying, you know, like Ian's trying to do something interesting. We're going to talk about that in the next episode. But why don't you give us a little teaser on why you're even dealing with
Yes.
Randy Chevry? Great football player,
Yeah,
CFL,
Randy,
NFL.
great NFL and mostly CFL player, great Canadian. I mean,
Yeah,
just an incredible
absolutely.
man, just great Canadian. And certainly makes the country proud to have him as one of their chosen son, one of the chosen sons of Canada. We met, Randy and I met because I was trying to break my second world record. And I'm still on that quest today. And that's to be the oldest man to play NCAA Division I college football down in the States. And I connected with Randy because I was training and I needed some help, some support, some expertise. And Randy provided that and was willing because we had a mutual friend within the football, universe, Chris Rubio. And so we got connected, and the next thing you know, I'm training with Randy and hanging out with Randy. And then Randy says to me, "You got to meet this guy, Bruno, because Bruno is the man. You got to meet Bruno. You guys got similar interests and you got similar visions, and I really think the two of you should meet." And the next thing you know, I'm sitting on a bench in front of a little coffee shop in Calgary, and off we go. A fantastic emerging friendship.
But it was interesting because I was talking to Randy, and Randy goes, "You got to meet this guy because Randy's and he's great on video. He used to have a great show up here, Chevy and Nasty, and everybody knew about Randy, how much he gave to the community, and he played in Edmonton too. And the reason why I'm bringing up Randy because we're talking about Canada is and he goes, "Bruno, you got to meet this guy, Ian. He's doing videos and TV." I'm like, "Yeah, sure, whatever." And I go, "How'd you meet this guy?" I go, "You're not gonna believe this." And he told me the story. I'm like, "What?" Like this guy got a death wish, and then he turns around, doesn't hesitate at all. He goes, "No, the guy can snap." I'm like, "Really? He's got a dart. He's good." So I'm like, "Okay, but he's still crazy." And then we met. The reason why I bring up Randy is because we were destined to meet too, because I'm originally from East. I'm not Eastern Canada, Central Canada, Ottawa, and he's quote unquote Central Canada, Montreal. And very few people know this. He's half Italian. He's fluent in Italian. His mom's Italian and fluent in French. I'm fluent in French. Grew up out east. And what's interesting is you're talking about coast to coast and Canadians, and sometimes it's a little different now than it was before. And we chit chat about this all the time. Is like, man, when I go back, especially to Central Canada, Eastern Canada, the view that they have is so not right or correct, especially the press. I shouldn't say the people, but they're like Westerners. They want to separate, and then the West. When I came out here, I'm like, oh no, it's not like that. Go to Quebec. The people are the people, and
Yeah,
and we. That's why God bless Randy. We get along because we grew up almost the same. He's younger than I am, but it was almost like nobody even cares about person to person. Nobody cares about that. And I think you touched on that because you've seen
yeah,
coast to coast, south and north of Canada,
yeah.
right?
I think that's the thing that we need to grab a hold of today. When you look at it from the grass tops, there seems to be incredible division, divisiveness, derision. But when you drop into the grassroots, what you find is people are having a common experience. People are having a shared challenge, shared adversity. And people also have really strong vision of how we can move through. And it's interesting to me, over the last year, I've had a chance to be in 140 communities on both sides of the North American border, both in Canada and the United States, just meeting with people. Smoky Lake, Alberta, meeting in the coffee shop there, or in Trochu, Alberta, meeting in the little restaurant there, and having conversations with people. And you know what you find? You find that the regular people have similar answers to today's challenges, and they're sound and they're salient and they're sustainable solutions. And we just need to unleash the human capital of Canada. We need to unleash the human capital of the small business owner and of the mid-level supervisor and of the guys and gals who go out and put in a good, hard 8 to 10 hours a day of work. We just need to unleash their capital because they have ideas, they have insight, they have wisdom, and they have knowledge. And the people closest to the problem are always best suited to solve the problem, Bruno. With no offense to anybody, any political party. Somebody in Ottawa far, far away is not the best person to solve a problem in Alder Flats, Alberta. It's the people of Alder Flats. And that's not a political statement. That's just a practical statement. Anybody that's ever run a manufacturing company will tell you the guy in the office doesn't know what's going on the manufacturing floor. Talk to the guys and gals that are on the floor. They'll tell you what needs to be done.
You know, it's interesting you brought up Trochu, and Trochu is a small town in Alberta. I've driven by it, and I know Juanita, who used to work with me, is from there. So, and that's about it. But interesting story because you said 700,000 new Canadians come here. By the way, like I mentioned to you before, we got to start a skate manufacturing company because everybody that moves to Canada wants to learn how to skate. So, you know, we can get some ice skates going on them. But I think we have a responsibility as Canadians to help them integrate into our country. Because as much as, you know, it's a mosaic, like you say, we do have a responsibility. They're kind of confused already to coming over here and trying to integrate in their family. So touch on that because the Trochu experience was pretty cool.
The harsh reality is this. In Western society, the birth rate is lower than it's ever been since the fall of the Roman Empire. That's a reality. So whether you're the United States, Canada, whether you're Europe, Australia, Japan, of the developed world, Western world, the birth rate has never been this low till you go back to the Roman times when it was in its decline. That creates downward pressure. In Canada specifically, there's not enough Canadians to do the work. That's just the reality. So we're going to have to get really good at new